Good evening. Don't you love Donna Novus Pachin? I just love that. Oh, man. A couple weeks ago, Michael gave a talk about silence, and it kind of reminded me of an experience I had with silence in a silent retreat, so I thought I'd share that with you. It was about probably 20, 30 years ago. I was a member of a Sangha in the Bay Area. We did what's called Vipassana meditation. It's just a meditation focused on the breath, and I had never meditated before. So the way that worked is we did like a half an hour meditation, and at first that was hard. It was hard to do a half an hour, but I got to where I could do that. And then we'd have a Dharma talk, and then we'd have tea and cookies or whatever. And so after about a year or so, the teacher came to me and said, you might benefit from a silent retreat, like a 4-day, I'm having a 4-day silent retreat. Would you like to go? And I'd never thought of that, but I said, sure, I'll give it a try. So the retreat was held at a little place called Santa Sabina. It used to be a Dominican novitiate in the Bay Area, and as there were fewer and fewer nuns, they got to the point where there were none, and so they closed it down, and the sisters turned it into a retreat center, and a very nice retreat center, and they did a really good job with it, and they took on Buddhists, you're not be Catholic. So I show up, and there's about 12 of us, and we don't know each other, right? We've come from different sanghas, and so we have dinner, I think it was a Wednesday night. We drive up there, and we're not in silence yet, so we're having dinner. And it's the usual, chit-chat. Hi, how are you? Hi, I'm fine, how are you? Well, what's your name? I'm Ed, I'm Jan. That kind of thing, just where are you from? And so nothing deep, we're just getting to know each other. So we go to bed, and then we have little cubicles up the second floor where the novices used to be. And we get up the next morning at 6 a.m., we're down there, and the teacher puts us in silence, right? She says, now this isn't just not talking. Silence means you're within yourself. So, when you walk, you look down, right? You don't look at other people. You never make eye contact. At dinner, you just, look at your food, and you're supposed to take a lot of time with your food, like, 15 minutes to eat an orange. And it's pretty interesting, really. But so she tells us all this, and then we have a short meditation. We go to breakfast. So we come back from breakfast, and she says, we're going to do an hour of meditation. Okay, an hour of meditation. I'll make it somehow. And it was hard, but I kind of got through it, and I kind of gutted it out, And so she gave a little Dharma talk, and then she said, okay, now we're going to have an hour and a half. Oh, man, really? And after 45 minutes, I was like a basket case. I was, twitching, and my brain was, I was supposed to be watching the breath, and I was wondering how the warriors were doing or something. My brain was just gone. And so we had lunch, and then we had another hour and a half. So you can imagine how that one went. And then in the evening, we had a choice of meditations, and I did walking meditation, which I love. Walking meditation is like, like you're as slow as you can imagine, right? It's like your grandfather times 20 or something. And I really enjoyed that, and I did it there was a chapel there that was dark, but it had moonlight coming in. It was gorgeous, right? So that kind of calmed me down a little bit. So I go to bed. Next day I get up, same routine. By lunchtime, I'm like, I want to gouge my eyes out, right? This is just going horribly. And the teacher came and got each one of us and took a little walk with us. She wanted to know how we're doing. And so she, we took a walk. I said, how you doing, Ed? And I go, terrible. I'm horrible at this. I can't keep my mind calm, and I'm jittery, and I'm terrible at meditation. I can't do this. So she thought for a second, and she said, so you're having a hard time meditating? And I said, yeah. And she said, and you're giving yourself a hard time because you're having a hard time. Why don't you just skip that first part and just have a hard time? And it was like the clouds lit up. I realized that I was causing the suffering. I was down on myself because somehow I was supposed to be a better meditator than I was. And so from then on, it was way better. It was still hard to meditate, but I wasn't beating myself up about it. So, and by the fourth day, an hour and a half, I was like, I can kind of get through this. So the final day was Sunday, and we did a half a day. And at noon, right before lunch, she brought us in, took us out of silence, said, namaste, thanks for coming. And there's a buffet lunch, so we went out and got our little plates. And so people a beautiful day, what are the odds, right? A beautiful day in the Bay Area. But it was there were 12 of us maybe. And we just arranged ourselves at tables kind of randomly. And the conversation couldn't have been different than it was when we got there. And now, mind you, we had not passed a word with each other. But there was some sort of intimacy that we developed by sitting in the same place for 4 days in silence. And, it was striking because, a lot of times when you're talking, you're like, oh, well, when will they shut up so I can talk? But people were listening to each other. And after they got through talking, there was a pause, the way you're supposed to do a conversation, right? And nobody ever does, right? And so we stayed some of us stayed for 3 hours. And we just kind of drifted away. And one of the interesting things was, you would imagine after a conversation like that, you would want to keep in touch. Nobody asked for contact information. It wasn't like it was a rule. I think we all just understood that was a moment in time. And it was only possible because of what we had done. And it was organic. People just, they just bye, hug, away they went. So I went to my car, and I'm 30 miles from my house. It's up in Marin. And then so you drive under the freeway and you come around to the ramp. And so, I'm coming around and I'm kind of getting in. And the minute I got on the freeway, it was it's 5 lanes, right? And just going, whew, blew me away. I could not do it. I was just overwhelmed by the noise and the speed and I literally creeped to the next exit and got off. And people are behind me going, get away, asshole, And so, I pull off and I turn the car around on the shoulder and I just watched. I just watched traffic for 20 minutes. And I think what happened was, I got sufficiently addled that I could participate, right? And so I get back on the freeway and, it's better and I'm finally getting, and 20 minutes into it, I'm like, get away, asshole. I'm just like everybody else, right? And so, and I talked to Shauna the next day, or the next time we had a Sangha, and I said, this was so amazing to be so calm. And she said, well, here's how it works. It's imagine sediment in water, and if the water's still, the sediment just kind of settles, And so if you sit for an hour, it settles to here. And if you sit for a day, it settles to here. And if you sit for 4 days. And she said, it doesn't stop. I mean, it just keeps settling. If you went 50 days, it would be calmer than on day 49. And I said, that's so cool. How do I get that feeling again? She looked at me and she said, you have to sit in silence for 4 days. So I'm like, oh, I guess that's the bad news, huh? So, but anyway, that's what I want to end with is what I learned about silence. Because if you'd asked me before that, I would have said, silence is the absence of sound, right? But it turns out that silence can be, how do I explain this? It's like a posture of the soul. That is, you can step into it, and when you step into it, it's not like you have to remind yourself not to talk, because you're in here. The world of talking is out there. You're not facing that world, you're facing inward. And so I just wanted you to think about that idea, that silence can actually be a thing in itself. It's not just the absence of sound, but it can be a way to go inside the soul, and it's actually, I'd say, like a posture of the soul. So with that, I'll be silent.